Great, good morning. Thank you, Illya, for putting this together. It's been a fantastic event so far. So I'm gonna sort of switch gears a little bit away from codes to something fairly different. So I'm co-chair of the New York Rising Red Hook Committee, Reconstruction Committee, and I wear many hats. I'm also faculty at Pratt. I'm part of the Resiliency Adaptation Mitigation Program, where we actually just recently took a group of 20, almost 30, to the Netherlands to study water management sponsored by the Dutch consulate, which was amazing. And in this situation, I'm gonna wear my hat of Red Hook resident and principal of Thread Collective. We are a multidisciplinary firm that does planning, architecture, and urban design. And I'm gonna present to you the project that we are working on and have been working on for many, many years. With the Red Hook Community Farm, we just recently completed a resiliency and master plan and rebuild. It is a farm, I'm sure some of you have been to South Brooklyn to go to the IKEA, which you can see there in the background. It is a farm that is actually 3.5 acres just, I don't have a pointer, but just opposite the IKEA, and it was it was originally a baseball diamond. So the founder and executive director of Added Value, which is the operator of the farm, founded this baseball diamond and saw it as a great place to transform it into a vision of urban agriculture in a place where youth and teens and neighborhood residents could understand sustainability of Red Hook better through the lens of urban agriculture. We came to them through a community visioning process where they were working with their teens and their community residents to re-envision the farm to become a community center and a hub for sustainability. This was the existing farm when we came to it. Basically, they had taken that blacktop and just dumped dirt on top of it and started growing earth. It's sort of as simple as it was. This project is a nice synthesis, though, of sort of looking at urban planning, design, and resiliency. When we came to them, they were sort of struggling with a lot of efficiency issues. So we started looking at how to make a larger area of crops, how to create a 20,000 square foot community center, and this is sort of one of the original schemes that we came up with. The core of compost was to be on one side, the crops in the center. We had a 30,000 gallon stormwater, rainwater harvesting center. We had an educational and greenhouse. We had a green roof. We had an open shade structure. Part of it was built out of shipping containers. And none of it considered the potential of sea level rise or resiliency. We won a NISCA grant to do this community visioning with Added Value, and as you can see from the date down there, our package was completed just days before Hurricane Sandy. So we had done a lot of really important and interesting preliminary work that ended up all getting washed away, so to speak. So the day that the storm hit, all of Red Hook was inundated, and the farm was particularly vulnerable given the location of where it is. So the storm really devastated the entire farm. The containers were washed all over. So this is sort of one of those iconic Red Hook images. We were under almost 12 or 13 feet of water, depending on where you were in the neighborhood. As you can see down there, Red Hook is part of this sort of peninsula that sticks out from South Brooklyn. And the farm itself is located in a place where the waters wash over both from the Hudson, from the Gowanus, and where those waters hit was actually on the farm. So you could kind of see the tidal area. So a lot of community effort was put into rebuilding and sort of looking at what the next stages were. This also happens to be a neighborhood that has sincere poverty issues. So 60% of our residents live below the poverty line. 8,000 of the 11,000 residents live in NYCHA housing, and about 30% are people of color. So we have sort of a very different demographic than your typical part of the city. And the farm provides a very important nexus for where all parts of the neighborhood come together. It also provides programming for teens and youth, and has a youth leadership program where youth run a farmer's market, a CSA, for over 100 families. So the loss of the farm was pretty devastating all around. Volunteers took weeks and weeks to pick up the ruined vegetables. There was no possibility of selling anything left on the farm. Part of the issue actually was the soil. So when I started sort of working with the executive director to figure out, okay, what are we going to do, there were a couple of options. One of the options was to basically pick up and remove everything. Another option was to build on top, and a third option was to do sort of a mushroom, sort of toxic removal through bioremediation. The mushroom option was really, really interesting, and we talked to some experts actually in Germany for a week or two. It was going to take about 4 or 5 years, we realized, in order to actually detoxify the soil. So we had done a toxic soil test of the farm right after the storm hit. And the soil was revealed itself to have minor toxic traces of toxins in the parts per billion, which for agriculture is actually at acceptable levels. But when you run a farm that is feeding people of color and there are environmental issues, you can't possibly go to your CSA and say, well, it seems to be fairly safe. It's just very hard to have people trust and have faith in the food that you're growing. So really the only solution we had left was to remove the soil. So we looked at this as an opportunity to envision and or sort of rebuild the farm back at a better than what we had originally designed. There were 1,200 cubic feet of soils. Part of the way that when we were working with the farm and how we were thinking with the farm was in these very large systems. So everything that we looked at the potential for a closed loop system. So when you're getting rid of 1,200 cubic feet of soil, it's a little overwhelming. We have no desire to send it to a landfill. We had no capacity actually to even send it to a landfill. So we started shopping around. There were a couple of very interesting programs. The city does have a soil exchange program. It was not really in effect quite yet. So we looked for some matchmaking. There was some possibility of taking it out to the Rockaways. They weren't quite ready for it yet. Somebody in Hunts Point actually had some property that had also been destroyed by the hurricane, and they were very interested in taking our toxic soil and building a wetland remediation or remediation area that would provide a buffer zone between his property and the water. So that seemed like a very beneficial, useful solution. We came up with a partnership where we paid for part of the trucking, they paid for part of the trucking. It took 3 or 4 weeks to get rid of the soil, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dump truck loads later. And it looked like this. So as we had the soil being removed, this was a very happy day and a sad day, right? So you kind of have to make lemonade out of your lemons. So you have to look at it as a time for renewal. So as we started to think about what our goals were in terms of the redesign, we luckily had that preliminary sort of drawings that we had done already in the first visioning, but we really needed to inject that with resiliency and stormwater management thinking. So, carbon neutral, that was sort of one of our primary goals. Wow, okay, I have to speed up. So, sort of these are sort of fairly obvious, but everything is sort of a closed loop system. So soils were one of our, sort of most pressing things, it being a farm. We reoriented the farm to be in the direction of east and west, so that way the crops would get maximum solar exposure. The project is actually funded in part through the Department of Sanitation, and the reason why is because they are creating local composting hubs. So Added Value became a local composting hub for our region, and there is now a 20,000 square foot composting alley, we call it, down below that is both has a strong educational component. And we raised the farm up 24 inches. So there is a level where you have to realize, okay, what is the maximum we can go in terms of resiliency? We could have gone to the 48 inches, which would protect us against future storms like Sandy. It creates a whole host of problems, and those problems have to do with access, visual access, ADA access. So we decided that it would be really best to keep it at 24 inches, which is a marker for the 100-year level sea level change, and allow the farm to be sort of resilient in the 100-year and maybe not in the storms like Superstorm Sandy. So we started laying blocks. So once the farm was cleared, we used what we call Mafia Blocks. At least that's what I came to know them as. I didn't know that that's what they were called before, or Jersey barriers. We turned them inside out, so the textured surface was on the interior and the flat surface was on the exterior. In the future, there will be, the students will be able to do murals on the side. There will be integrated plantings. And we basically ringed the edge with close to, I can't remember how many miles, it's like almost a mile of Jersey barrier. So we have, and then there's a drainage layer, and then Department of Sanitation then began to bring in soil. And so, tens of thousands of cubic yards of compost fill this area. That is the first bed that was finished. This was finished in July or August. So literally as they're filling and tamping, they were building beds because we were really late in the season. Like I said, there's a youth program. So these are part of the Green Corps preparing the beds. You can see the farm still under construction in the back half. So we're planting and they're building. It was quite a little bit of a tight time frame. The compost system works completely by hand, no machinery on site, and that's because they have enough volunteers and they feel like if we're really trying to be carbon neutral, don't bother with machines when you don't need it. Picture of Compost Alley, once again. So this composting system actually runs with a pump. So that way in the winter, it can be an all-year system. But that pump, we didn't want to run off of electricity. So we have a 10-kilowatt array that then feeds the pump system. And then there's extra electricity being stored in these marine batteries that are waterproof. And that will run refrigeration on site. They also feed a whole bunch of restaurants and for the marketplace. It also is a food hub, and so we've built in resiliency for food hub in emergency situations. When the storm happened, there was zero fresh produce in the entire neighborhood of Red Hook, let alone, sort of within walking distance. So there are now plans in place for if future events happen, how we will be basically a location for distribution. We did distribution out of the Coffee Street Park in an emergency, and then this is a NYCHA farm that was another farm that also supplied, that we designed, that also supplied fresh fruits and vegetables while the other farm was under construction. And ideally, the farm will look like that in the spring. Thank you.